When it comes to Celtic, one football venue obviously springs to mind: Celtic Park. However, in fact, there's been more than one ground with this name. And even these two locations are not the only places over the decades that the Boys have called home. At times, Celtic have been home when playing at Hampden, Firhill, Easter Road, Shawfield, Murrayfield, St Mirren Park, and even Ibrox. This is the story of all Celtic's home venues. The first Celtic Park was located just a stone's throw from the modern day site. After Celtic's 1887 formation, the new club needed a ground to play on. They quickly identified spare ground just next to the eastern wall of Janefield Cemetery. With the help of the local Irish community, they soon built the original Celtic Park. This would be the club's home for 4 years, from their first game in May 1888 until Celtic's last match at the ground in July 1892. There were many notable moments at this site, including the boys' first defeat of Rangers in a cup final, in the 1892 Charity Cup. However, ironic events would soon necessitate a move away. One reason for the migration of the Irish to Scotland had been to escape the greed of landlords. Now the Celts were faced with a 9-fold increase in their rent and declined to pay. Instead, the boys hunted venues across Glasgow, including Springburn in the south side, before deciding to remain in the same locale as before. This new Celtic site, literally only metres from the original ground, remains the club's home to this day. The Celts first played there in 1892, and over the years there's been numerous changes to the ground. The most recent major example of this was the ground's demolition in the mid-1990s, to be replaced with the all-seater stadium that is celebrated around the world. Although both Celtic Parks are the places most closely associated with the club, there have at times been various other grounds treated as home by the Celts. The obvious and most regular of these is Hampden Park. In the first instance, Celtic spent a full season at this ground in 1994-95, when Celtic Park was being rebuilt. For league games at least, this was an experience best forgot. However, Hampden has been the boys' home venue on other happier occasions, especially in the 1970s. Famously, it was witness to Celtic's victory over Leeds United in the 1969-70 European Cup. This set a UEFA record for match attendance, with 136,505 people being officially admitted, and doubtless many more sneaking in uncounted. Celtic have also officially won the league at Hampden on different occasions. This was in a playoff game versus Rangers in 1905, and then an away match versus Queen's Park the following year. In 1971, Celtic played at Hampden owing to Celtic Park renovations. The boys beat Ayr United there, which led to celebrations marking their 6th successive title. However, they wouldn't technically be champions until the final game of the season, which was back at Celtic Park. Hampden Park hasn't been Celtic's only home from home. Fans will recall different locations being used for this purpose in the mid-2010s. In 2014, the Commonwealth Games were held at Celtic Park, including the opening ceremony. This meant that Celtic could not play there, with the boys instead being at home in Edinburgh. Celtic's early European matches took place at Scotland's home of rugby, Murrayfield. This included a 4-0 win over Reykjavik, and an even more impressive 3-0 win over Legia Warsaw. The latter one was controversial. Celtic actually lost, but a Legia player was wrongly registered, and so they forfeited the tie. The following season, in 2015, Celtic were again on the road when at home. The boys played 3 pre-season friendlies at St Mirren Park owing to Parkhead renovations. This led to complaints from some St Mirren fans because of the presence of Celtic branding at the Paisley ground. Although building work has often forced Celtic to play elsewhere, there's been other reasons that the boys have had to have a temporary flitting. At times, the ground has been afflicted by significant damage, such as high winds ripping off a roof in 1896 and a fire in 1904. However, the biggest and most problematic fire came towards the end of the 1928-29 season and left the ground uninhabitable. This caused numerous problems for the boys, but also for Celtic historians, as huge amounts of club records and documents were destroyed. As a result of this fire, Celtic were forced to play at different away venues. In March and April 1929, Clyde's ground of Shawfield became Celtic's home for 2 matches. The boys beat third Lanark 3-1 and overcame Falkirk by 3-0. Celtic also travelled to other venues, but as the official home team. They beat Partick Thistle 1-0 at Firhill, lost 4-1 to Hibs at Easter Road, and were beaten 2-1 by Queen's Park at Hampden. Another venue out with Scotland that Celtic have used as a de facto home was Old Trafford in Manchester. In 1984, Celtic beat Rapid Vienna but were forced to replay the game owing to a Rapid player falsely claiming he'd been hit by a bottle. UEFA decreed the match should be held at a neutral venue. However, the relatively short distance to Manchester saw 40,000 Celtic fans make the journey, making it akin to a home fixture, although they did return back to Scotland disappointed. But perhaps the most unexpected place that's been a home venue for Celtic is Ibrox. That has indeed happened when the boys have faced Rangers. During World War II, there were restrictions on the size of crowds allowed in grounds, not least in case they became a target for German bombers. At the start of 1940, Celtic were due to host Rangers at Celtic Park. However, owing to Ibrox being a bigger ground, it was realised that more fans would be able to attend there and thus raise more money. As a result, the match was switched to Ibrox, with Celtic being the official home team in a game that ended in a 1-1 draw. This isn't the only occasion that's been the case. In 1971, Celtic Park renovations meant Celtic needed another venue to play against Rangers in the League Cup. The Light Blues at first refused to let Celtic use their home ground, but eventually relented. If they hadn't done so, Morton had actually suggested the game could instead be played in Greenock. Rangers' decision led to the strange situation where Celtic season ticket holders were able to use their tickets to get access to Ibrox. And those fans were delighted as they watched the boys claim a 2-0 home win. As a result of this, it meant that Celtic won at Ibrox 3 times in the space of a month. In the days of League Cup group stages, the boys had to go back to the south side for the return game, which was held 2 weeks later, and this time ended 3-0 to Celtic. And then just 2 weeks later, Celtic won 3-2 in a league game at Ibrox for their third victory at that venue in 29 days. Despite having played at all of these locations, including the original Celtic Park, only one place will truly ever seem like home to Celtic fans. That's the modern-day Celtic Park. The next time you're at the ground, spare a thought for all those players and fans that have passed through Parkhead's gates since the stadium first opened. If you want to learn more about Celtic history, follow Hail Hail History on Twitter, X or Blue Sky. You can also take part in free Celtic history walks. Visit celticwalkingtours.wordpress.com to find out more.